Maya Chen was supposed to come home on Sunday. She and 4 other girls had gone to Sunburst Music Festival that weekend in 2009. Just a normal summer trip. Music, friends, making memories before senior year started. Sunday came and went. So did Monday. And Tuesday. Maya never came home. Neither did Jessica, Amber, Nicole, or Sarah. For 15 years, Linda Chen has lived with one question. What happened to her daughter that weekend? Last month, while looking through Maya's old photos on what would have been her 33rd birthday, Linda finally found her answer. It was there the whole time, hidden in a video that thousands of people had seen. A detail so small that everyone, including the police, had missed it completely. What Linda discovered changed everything, and it all started with 5 minutes of grainy festival footage that someone posted online 15 years ago. Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from today, and please consider to subscribe. Summer 2009. The economy was in shambles, but for 5 teenage girls from Portland, Oregon, none of that mattered. They had saved up their babysitting money and summer job paychecks for one thing, Sunburst Music Festival. Maya Chen, 17, was the planner of the group. She'd made color-coded spreadsheets of which bands they'd see when, mapped out the campground, even researched the best food trucks. Her mother Linda still has those printouts, kept in a manila folder that's gone soft from handling. Jessica Torres, 18, was the free spirit. She'd convinced her conservative parents to let her go by promising to check in every few hours. Nicole Park, also 18, was the responsible one, the designated driver, the one who remembered sunscreen and phone chargers. Amber Williams, 19, was technically the oldest, but acted like the youngest, always ready for an adventure. And Sarah Mitchell, 17 like Maya, was the quiet observer who documented everything with her new digital camera. They left Portland that Friday morning in Nicole's Honda Civic, trunk packed with camping gear and enough snacks to feed an army. Linda Chen watched them drive away from her kitchen window, that familiar knot of worry in her stomach that every parent knows. But it was normal worry, the kind about drunk drivers and boys and whether they'd remember to drink water. She had no idea she was watching her daughter leave for the last time. The festival was everything they'd hoped for. The weather was perfect, the music was loud, and for the first time in their lives, they felt truly independent. Maya's text messages to her mother were sporadic, but reassuring. Made it safe. Food here is expensive, but so good. Nicole snores louder than the bass drums. Saturday brought more of the same. The girls moved through the festival grounds like a pack, never separating, always looking out for each other. Sarah's camera captured it all, selfies by the main stage, candid shots of strangers, videos of their favorite bands, hours and hours of footage that would later be pored over by investigators, frame by frame, looking for clues. Sunday morning, Maya called her mother around 10 a.m. "Mum, can you Venmo me like $50? Everything here costs a fortune, and I want to get some merch before we leave." It was a normal conversation. Maya complained about the porta potties, laughed about how Amber had flirted with a bass player who turned out to be 17, promised they'd leave right after the headliner finished around midnight. "Drive safe," Linda had said. "Text me when you're on the road." "I will, Mum. Love you too, baby." Those were the last words Linda Chen ever heard her daughter speak. Monday morning came with no word from any of the girls. Linda tried not to panic at first. Maya was notorious for forgetting to charge her phone, and teenagers weren't exactly known for their punctuality. But by noon, when 4 other families were calling her, asking if she'd heard from their daughters, the knot in Linda's stomach had become a full-blown alarm. The festival grounds were already being broken down when the first missing person reports were filed. Vendors were packing up, bands were loading out, and the carefully organized chaos of the weekend was dissolving into tire tracks in the mud. Detective Ray Morrison was assigned to the case. 20-year veteran of the Oregon State Police, he'd handled missing persons before, but nothing quite like this. 5 girls, all from the same friend group, all vanishing simultaneously. It wasn't a typical runaway situation. The first 48 hours are critical, he told the families. But I'm not going to lie to you, festivals are complicated crime scenes. Thousands of people, most of them intoxicated, minimal security footage, and by the time we realize something's wrong, everyone's gone home. The investigation was thorough but frustrating. The girls' campsite was found exactly as they'd left it. Tents still standing, personal belongings untouched, car keys sitting on the camp table. Their phones were never found, despite extensive searches of the festival grounds and surrounding forest. Witnesses came forward in droves, but their stories conflicted. Some remembered seeing the girls near the main stage during the Sunday night headliner. Others swore they'd spotted them by the food trucks earlier in the evening. A few claimed to have seen them arguing with someone, but descriptions of this mysterious person varied wildly. Sarah's camera was recovered from their tent, but the memory card was missing. Security footage from the festival was limited and mostly useless. The main stage cameras focused on the performers, not the crowd. Vendor cameras pointed at their merchandise, not the walkways, and the handful of crowd shots that did exist showed nothing but a sea of faces, impossible to identify individuals in the mass of humanity. After 6 months, the case went cold. Detective Morrison retired 2 years later, but he never forgot the 5 girls from Sunburst. He'd kept copies of all the case files in his home office, spending weekends reviewing witness statements and following up on tips that led nowhere. The families, meanwhile, lived in a strange limbo. They couldn't grieve because there were no bodies. They couldn't move on because there were no answers. They held vigils and organized searches and plastered missing person flyers across 3 states. But as the years passed, the media attention faded. New tragedies took over the news cycle. The world moved on. Linda Chen did not. Every year on Maya's birthday, Linda performed the same ritual. She would take the day off work, make Maya's favorite breakfast, chocolate chip pancakes with way too much syrup, and sit at her kitchen table with her laptop. Then she would methodically go through every piece of digital evidence from that weekend, looking for something she might have missed. Maya's Facebook posts, her Instagram stories, tagged photos from other festival goers, YouTube videos uploaded by random strangers who happened to capture a few seconds of crowd footage. Linda had watched them all hundreds of times, screenshotted every frame that showed even a glimpse of her daughter's distinctive purple hair. Over the years, she'd become something of an expert in digital forensics. She'd learned about metadata and reverse image searches. She'd joined online communities of amateur investigators who specialized in cold cases. She'd even taken a community college course on video analysis. Her friends and family worried about her. Her husband had moved out after 3 years, unable to handle Linda's obsession with finding Maya. Her son had stopped visiting, tired of coming home to a house that felt more like a detective's office than a family home. But Linda couldn't stop. Every birthday, every anniversary of the disappearance, every time she saw a young woman with dark hair who looked like Maya might have looked at 25 or 30 or 32, the wound would tear open fresh. This year felt different, though she couldn't say why. Maybe it was the milestone, 15 years. Maybe it was because Maya would have been 33, the same age Linda had been when Maya was born. Or maybe it was just that Linda was tired of hoping and needed to find a way to let go. She almost didn't do the ritual this time. Almost just let the day pass like any other. But habit is stronger than intention, and she found herself at the kitchen table at sunrise, laptop open, chocolate chip pancakes growing cold beside her. She started with Maya's own posts, the same ones she'd memorized years ago. Then moved to the tagged photos, the group shots, the candid moments captured by friends and strangers alike. It was in a video posted by someone named Brad, Festival Kid 92, that she saw it. The video was titled Sunburst 2009 Epic Weekend, and Linda had watched it probably 50 times over the years. It was 5 minutes of typical festival footage, shaky camera work, loud music, glimpses of crowds and stages and food trucks. At the 3-minute mark, the camera panned across the crowd during what looked like Sunday evening. Linda had always focused on the foreground, looking for Maya's purple hair or Jessica's distinctive denim jacket. But this time, something in the background caught her eye, a figure in dark clothing moving against the flow of the crowd. While everyone else was facing the stage, dancing and singing along, this person was walking deliberately toward the back of the festival grounds, following something. Linda paused the video and leaned closer to her screen. The figure was following a group of 5 girls. Even in the grainy, poorly lit footage, Linda could make out the distinctive silhouettes. There was Maya's purple hair, catching the light from a nearby vendor booth, Jessica's denim jacket, Nicole's yellow festival wristband that she wore on her upper arm like a badge of honor. Someone had been following her daughter and her friends, someone who knew exactly where they were going. Linda's hands were shaking as she took screenshots, zooming in as much as the resolution would allow. The figure's face was obscured by shadows and the poor video quality, but she could make out a few details: dark clothing, average height, and something that made her blood run cold, some kind of official-looking badge or ID hanging from their neck. Festival staff, security, someone with access and authority, someone the girls would have trusted. For the first time in 15 years, Linda Chen had a real lead. Linda didn't sleep that night. She printed out every screenshot, enhanced them using free software she found online, and created a timeline of the mysterious figure's movements through the festival. By morning, her kitchen table looked like a conspiracy theorist's fever dream: photos, printouts, red string connecting various pieces of evidence. Her first call was to Detective Morrison, now retired but still living in Oregon. "Linda," he said, his voice heavy with the weight of years. "I've been wondering when you'd call this year. Ray, I found something. In the video footage, someone was following them." She could hear him sigh through the phone. Over the years, Linda had called him dozens of times with potential leads: a sighting in California, a Jane Doe in Nevada who might have been Jessica, a tip from someone who claimed to have information but wanted money first. None of them had panned out. "Linda, I've looked at every piece of footage from that weekend. We had digital forensics experts go through everything frame by frame. Did you look at Brad Festival Kid 92's video, posted 3 days after the festival ended, 5 minutes and 27 seconds long?" A pause, the sound of papers shuffling. Let me check my files. Brad, what was the account name again?" Linda walked him through everything she'd found: the figure in dark clothing, the timing, the badge or ID. By the time she finished, Detective Morrison was quiet for a long moment. "Linda, I'm going to be honest with you. This is the first new lead we've had in over a decade. I'm coming out of retirement for this one." Working together, Linda and Detective Morrison began the painstaking process of identifying the mysterious figure. They reached out to Brad Festival Kid 92, whose real name turned out to be Bradley Watkins, now a 34-year-old insurance adjuster living in Seattle. Bradley still had the original footage on his old laptop, higher resolution than what he'd uploaded to YouTube. When Linda saw the enhanced version, her heart nearly stopped. The figure's badge was clearly visible now: Sunburst Festival Security. "We need the employee records from the festival," Detective Morrison said. "Every security guard, every staff member, everyone who was working that weekend." Sunburst Festival had gone out of business in 2012, but Morrison still had contacts in the industry. It took 2 weeks and several legal favors, but they finally got their hands on the personnel files. 43 security guards had worked the festival that weekend. Linda and Morrison went through each file methodically, comparing heights, builds, and work assignments to the figure in the video. One name stood out: Marcus Webb, 26 at the time, hired just 2 weeks before the festival. His application was sparse: a previous job at a Portland nightclub, references that checked out but were vague, and a background check that came back clean. But his assigned sector was interesting. While most security guards were stationed at entrances near the stages or by the vendor areas, Marcus Webb had been assigned to perimeter patrol, essentially wandering the edges of the festival grounds, watching for people trying to sneak in or out. He would have had access to the entire festival. He would have known the layout, the blind spots, the places where someone could disappear without being seen. Linda felt a chill as she read through his file. This was him. This was the person who had taken her daughter. Finding Marcus Webb's current address took another week. He'd moved around a lot over the years: Portland to Seattle to Boise to Denver. Currently, he was living in a small town outside Phoenix, working as a night security guard at a warehouse. Linda wanted to confront him immediately, but Detective Morrison urged caution. "We need to be smart about this," he said. "If he's our guy, we can't spook him. We need evidence, not just suspicion." But Linda was tired of being patient. She'd been patient for 15 years. She booked a flight to Phoenix. Linda Chen had never been to Arizona before. The dry heat hit her like a physical force as she stepped out of the Phoenix airport, her hands sweating as she gripped the rental car keys. She'd found Marcus Webb's address through public records, a small apartment complex on the outskirts of Glendale, the kind of place where people went to disappear from their past lives. She'd also found his work schedule through a combination of social media stalking and calling his employer pretending to be from a shipping company. He worked nights, which meant he'd be home during the day. Sleeping, probably. Vulnerable. Linda sat in her rental car outside the complex for 2 hours before she worked up the courage to knock on his door. She'd rehearsed what she would say, but now that the moment was here, her mind was blank. A man answered the door on the third knock, early 40s, average height, thinning brown hair. He looked tired, confused, like someone who'd been woken up from a deep sleep. "Yeah? Marcus Webb? Who's asking?" Linda took a deep breath. "My name is Linda Chen. My daughter, Maya, disappeared from Sunburst Festival 15 years ago. I have video footage of you following her and her friends on the night they vanished." The change in Marcus Webb's expression was immediate and dramatic. The confusion vanished, replaced by something that looked like panic. He started to close the door, but Linda stepped forward. "I know what you did. I have proof. We can do this easy or we can do this hard, but we're going to talk." Marcus stepped back, and Linda followed him into the apartment. It was sparse, clean, almost sterile. No personal photos, no decorations, nothing that spoke to a life being lived rather than endured. "I don't know what you think you saw," Marcus said, but his voice was shaking. "I worked security at a lot of festivals back then. I don't remember specific people." Linda pulled out her phone and showed him the enhanced video footage. "This is you, following 5 teenage girls. 3 hours later, those girls were gone forever. What did you do to them?" Marcus stared at the screen for a long moment. When he looked up, there were tears in his eyes. "You don't understand," he said. "I was trying to protect them." What Marcus Webb told Linda Chen over the next hour changed everything she thought she knew about her daughter's disappearance. Yes, he had been following the girls that night, but not to hurt them, to warn them. "There was something happening at that festival," Marcus said, pacing around his small living room. "Something I stumbled onto during my first week on the job. A group of vendors, some of the senior security staff, they were running something on the side." He described a sophisticated operation that used music festivals as cover for drug trafficking and human exploitation. Young people, often runaways or kids from troubled homes, would be recruited with promises of easy money and good times. Some were used as drug mules, others simply disappeared. "I tried to report it through official channels," Marcus said, "but my supervisor was involved, so was the head of security. When I kept pushing, they made it clear that I needed to back off, or I'd be the one who disappeared." On Sunday night, Marcus had overheard conversations that made him realize the girls were being targeted. Something about them being perfect, clean backgrounds, stable families, the kind of disappearance that would be investigated thoroughly. "I was trying to get to them first," he said, "to warn them, to get them out of there safely. But I was too late." Linda stared at him, trying to process what she was hearing. "Too late how? What happened to them?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "They saw something they shouldn't have. A drug deal gone bad. Someone got killed. Your daughter and her friends, they witnessed it." "So what happened to them?" "I don't know." Marcus's voice broke. "I lost track of them in the crowd. By the time I found their campsite, it was empty. I've been running ever since, figuring it was only a matter of time before they decided I knew too much too." Linda felt the world tilting around her. After 15 years of searching, she'd been so sure she'd found the answer. But Marcus Webb wasn't her daughter's killer. He was just another victim of the same conspiracy that had claimed Maya. But Marcus had given her something valuable: names, dates, details about the criminal organization that had been operating at the festival. "There's someone you need to talk to," Marcus said. "Detective Sarah Kim with the FBI. She's been investigating this network for years. I've been feeding her information anonymously." Detective Sarah Kim was nothing like Linda had expected. Young, maybe early 30s, with the kind of intensity that suggested she'd seen too much too soon in her career. They met at a coffee shop in downtown Phoenix and Kim cut straight to the point. "Mrs. Chen, I've been working the Sunburst case for 3 years. Not officially, it's outside my jurisdiction and my department thinks I'm wasting time on a cold case. But Marcus Webb isn't the first person to come forward with information about what was happening at that festival." Kim spread out a folder full of documents, witness statements, financial records, surveillance photos. "What we're looking at is a network that operated at music festivals across the Pacific Northwest from 2008 to 2011. They used the chaos and transient nature of festivals to run drugs, launder money, and traffic people. Sunburst 2009 was supposed to be a routine operation, but something went wrong." Linda's hands were shaking as she looked through the photos. She recognized some of the faces, vendors she remembered from the festival, security guards who had seemed so helpful and official. What went wrong? A deal between 2 rival groups turned into a shooting. 3 people died in what looked like a random act of violence. But your daughter and her friends saw it happen. Kim pulled out a different folder, this one marked with FBI, seals and classification stamps. "Mrs. Chen, what I'm about to tell you is going to change your life. Are you sure you want to hear this?" Linda nodded, though her heart was pounding so hard she could barely hear her own voice. "I need to know what happened to Maya." The night your daughter and her friends witnessed the shooting, federal agents who had been investigating the network made a decision. The girls had seen too much. They could identify the shooters, the victims, the entire operation. But they were also innocent bystanders whose lives were now in danger. Kim paused, watching Linda's face carefully. A decision was made to extract them, to make it look like they had vanished, when in reality they were being placed in protective custody until the case could be built and the network dismantled. Linda felt like she couldn't breathe. "Extract them, you mean?" "I mean your daughter didn't disappear, Mrs. Chen. She was rescued. All 5 girls were." The coffee shop around them seemed to fade away. Linda could hear her own heartbeat, could feel the blood rushing in her ears, but there were no bodies, no evidence. The investigation was deliberately sabotaged by agents working on the federal case. We couldn't risk the network discovering that the girls were still alive and in custody. As far as anyone knew, including local law enforcement, they had vanished without a trace. Kim leaned forward. "Mrs. Chen, your daughter has been alive this entire time. She's been living under federal protection, waiting for the day when it would be safe for her to come home." The safe house was in suburban Denver, an ordinary-looking ranch home on a quiet street where neighbors minded their own business and asked no questions. Linda's hands were shaking so badly that Detective Kim had to help her out of the car. 15 years of grief and hope and desperate searching had led to this moment, and she wasn't sure her legs would carry her to the front door. "Mrs. Chen," Kim said gently, "I need you to understand that Maya isn't the 17-year-old girl you remember. She's 33 now. She's lived an entire life you haven't been part of. This is going to be difficult for both of you." Linda nodded, though she wasn't sure she was processing anything beyond the impossible reality that her daughter was alive and waiting just beyond that ordinary front door. The door opened before they could knock. Maya Chen was beautiful. That was Linda's first thought, followed immediately by the recognition of her own features reflected in her daughter's face, aged by time and experience, but unmistakably hers. Maya's purple hair had long since grown out to a natural black, cut short and professional. She was taller than Linda remembered, or maybe Linda had just shrunk over the years. She wore a simple blue dress and no makeup, and her eyes, Maya's eyes, still the same dark brown Linda remembered, were filled with tears. "Mom?" The word broke Linda open completely. She collapsed into her daughter's arms, 15 years of grief pouring out of her in great, heaving sobs. Maya held her tightly, and Linda could feel that her daughter was crying too, could feel the years of separation and loss in the way Maya's hands trembled against her back. They stood there in the doorway for what felt like hours, holding each other and crying, until Detective Kim gently suggested they move inside. The house was comfortable but temporary feeling, like a place where people stayed but didn't live. Maya led her mother to a couch in the living room, and they sat close together, Maya's hand clasped tightly in Linda's. "I wanted to contact you," Maya said, her voice hoarse with emotion. "Every day for 15 years, I wanted to call you, to write you, to let you know I was okay. But they told me that if the network found out I was alive, they'd kill me and come after you too." Linda couldn't speak. She just stared at her daughter's face, memorizing the changes, the ways time had shaped the girl she remembered into this woman she was meeting for the first time. "What happened to the others?" Linda finally managed to ask. Maya's expression darkened. "Jessica and Amber are safe. They're living normal lives now under new identities. Jessica's married, has 2 kids. Amber became a teacher. We stay in touch, but we can never be who we used to be." "And Nicole and Sarah?" Maya was quiet for a long moment. "Sarah died 2 years after we went into protection. Cancer. She was only 19. Her voice broke. Nicole couldn't handle the isolation. She took her own life in 2015. The joy of finding Maya alive crashed into the reality of her friends' fates. 2 of the 5 girls Linda had spent 15 years searching for were gone forever. "I'm so sorry, Mum," Maya said. "I know what you must have gone through. I know what all the families went through. But there was no other way. If we had stayed, if we had tried to testify, we all would have ended up dead." Detective Kim spoke up from across the room. The network was dismantled in 2018. The last of the key players were arrested 3 years ago. It's finally safe for Maya to reclaim her identity. Linda looked at her daughter, really looked at her. "What do you want to do now?" Maya smiled, and for the first time since she'd walked through that door, Linda saw a glimpse of the 17-year-old girl she remembered. "I want to come home, Mom. I want to come home and have dinner with you and tell you about the last 15 years. I want to hear about your life, about Dad, about everyone I've missed. I want to try to figure out how to be your daughter again." Linda pulled Maya close again, holding her tightly. "You never stopped being my daughter, not for a single day." The media attention was overwhelming at first. "Missing girl found alive after 15 years," screamed the headlines. "Mother's love, solves cold case, festival disappearance, linked to federal investigation." Linda and Maya gave one interview together to set the record straight. They wanted people to know that Maya hadn't been kidnapped in the traditional sense, that she'd been protected rather than harmed. They wanted the other families to have answers, even if those answers came with unbearable grief. Jessica Torres and Amber Williams, now living under different names, chose to remain in the shadows. They'd built new lives and didn't want to give them up, even for the chance to reclaim their old identities. Maya moved back to Portland, into a small apartment just 10 minutes from her mother's house. She found work as a victim's advocate, using her experience to help other people navigate the aftermath of violence and trauma. The transition wasn't easy. 15 years was a long time, and both women had to learn how to be mother and daughter to each other again. They went to therapy, together and separately. They fought sometimes about big things and small things, working through the grief and anger and loss that came with their impossible situation. But they also had dinner together twice a week. They went to movies and shopping and all the ordinary activities that mothers and daughters do. Maya told Linda about the books she'd read and the places she'd lived and the life she'd built in the margins of witness protection. Linda told Maya about the years of searching, the obsession that had cost her marriage and nearly her sanity, the way hope had kept her alive even when it felt like it was killing her. On Maya's 34th birthday, the first birthday they'd celebrated together since she was 17, Linda didn't make chocolate chip pancakes. Instead, they went out for Thai food, Maya's new favorite, and talked about the future instead of the past. That night, Linda deleted the folder of festival photos from her laptop. She packed away the printed screenshots and the timeline she'd created and the evidence board that had covered her kitchen table for months. She didn't need them anymore. Her daughter was home. Not the same daughter who had driven away in Nicole's Honda Civic 15 years ago, but the woman that girl had become. Different, changed, shaped by experiences Linda would never fully understand, but alive and here, and ready to figure out what came next. Detective Morrison came to visit a few months later. He was older, greyer, but his eyes were bright with satisfaction. "You know," he told Linda over coffee, "in 30 years of police work, I never had a case that ended like this one. Usually, when someone's been missing this long, finding them means finding a body. You never gave up hope when everyone else did, including me." Linda looked out her kitchen window at Maya's car parked in the driveway. Her daughter was inside, helping her reorganize the spare room that had been turned into a makeshift investigation center. "I couldn't give up," Linda said. "She was my baby." "You don't give up on your baby." Sometimes, late at night, Linda would think about the randomness of it all. If she hadn't decided to do her annual ritual one more time, if she hadn't noticed the figure in the background of a video she'd watched dozens of times before, if she hadn't been stubborn enough to push when everyone told her to let go. Maya might have lived the rest of her life in protection, and Linda might have died never knowing what happened to her daughter. But mostly, Linda tried not to think about the what-ifs. Instead, she focused on the what is, her daughter's laugh from the next room, the sound of someone she loved moving through her house, the simple miracle of having Maya back in her life. The 5 girls who went to Sunburst Music Festival in 2009 were gone forever. 3 of them were dead, and 2 were living under different names, different lives. But Maya Chen was home. And sometimes, Linda thought as she listened to her daughter's voice calling from the spare room, sometimes that has to be enough. Sometimes it's everything. Thank you for listening to this story about love, loss, and the lengths a mother will go to find her child. If you enjoyed this audio story, please subscribe for more true crime mysteries and human interest stories that explore the depths of family bonds and the power of never giving up hope.